Hey, this is Ryan Hidalgo, and this is Hidalgo News Review. Tom Steyer, billionaire activist, announced his candidacy last month, and CNN reported at the time, Steyer has operated as a funding force in Democratic politics in recent years, bankrolling candidates and organizations that promote liberal causes, including the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Steyer's net worth reached $1.6 billion this year, according to Forbes, a fortune he began amassing in 1986 when he launched his hedge fund, Farallon Capital. The 2018 House races, which Steyer spent over $100 million on, marked the third consecutive election cycle in which Steyer spent millions supporting Democratic candidates. But it's Steyer's efforts to impeach Trump which have made him the most visible, starring in self-funded television commercials in which he calls on Congress to remove the president from office. Steyer joins a crowded Democratic primary that has already participated in the first round of primary debates. And the New York Times, they report on how much Tom Steyer intends to spend. And the headline is, Tom Steyer will run for president and plans to spend $100 million on his bid. And then the article reads, that figure exceeds the total fundraising over the last 3 months by Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris combined. A $100 million budget would represent about half the cost of Hillary Clinton's 2016 primary campaign. Most candidates who run for president spend a fraction of that sum. Now, even media didn't want him to run. This article's from the Washington Post, which, typically favors more centrist Democrats. Granted, Tom Steyer, he's a little bit more progressive on some issues, but the article reads, Dear Tom Steyer, don't run for president. And the article body states, his virtuous politics can't disguise the truth. He's buying his way into a race he's got no business entering. The issue with our billionaire-driven politics isn't just that the men with the money are ill-intentioned, though it certainly doesn't help that many of them define the national interest in such a way that it seems to benefit them personally. It's that their money gives them an outsized influence. That means a very large influence, no matter what their positions. Steyer has never held elected office, and there's no evidence the public is clamoring for his candidacy. That being said, Steyer is performing one valuable service, albeit inadvertently. He's demonstrating again that the last thing we need is another billionaire thinking he deserves a term in the White House. Now, reactions at the time were mostly negative to Steyer running. Here's Bernie Sanders' reaction to Steyer announcing his candidacy last month.
And we have a new candidate in the race, Tom Steyer, the billionaire who's made a cause of impeachment. What do you think about him entering the race with all of his money?
Well, I have known Tom for a number of years, and I like Tom personally. But I do have to say, as somebody who in this campaign has received 2 million campaign contributions, averaging, I believe, $19 a person, I am a bit tired of seeing billionaires trying to buy political power. So I like Tom. He is a good guy. He's a friend of mine. But I'm not a great fan of billionaires getting involved in the political process.
So he should not be taken seriously as a candidate, you think?
No, I didn't say that. Look, if you are a billionaire by definition, you are taken seriously. But I think the American people understand that one of the great problems facing American society today is that we have a billionaire class which is getting richer and richer, while the working class of this country is struggling and, in fact, has been decimated over the last 45 years. And people are sick and tired of big money in politics. People want to overturn Citizens United. In my view, we've got to move to public funding of elections. Billionaires, and this is not just Tom Steyer, billionaires should not be able to spend unlimited sums of money trying to buy elections.
Now, Bernie Sanders is completely correct about the United States needing public funding in elections. Additionally, I think we need equalizing the amount of money that candidates are allowed to spend on ads. That way, when you have a billionaire like Tom Steyer, he can only spend so much of his fortune, right? He could only spend the amount that other candidates can spend, right? Therefore, his edge as a billionaire gone in that respect. I'm sure the electoral system needs other tweaks to ensure that rich individuals don't have an edge over poorer individuals. And it needs other tweaks just in general. Elizabeth Warren's reaction to Tom Steyer announcing he was running: the Democratic primary should not be decided by billionaires. Whether they're funding super PACs or funding themselves, the strongest Democratic nominee in the general will have a coalition that's powered by a grassroots movement. Now, before I go any further, let me just note that Tom Steyer, when he announced, he did this after the June debates had already happened, and he did it in early July, and he didn't amass the prerequisites to qualifying for the late July debate. But recently, he has qualified for the September debate. Let me tell you what was needed to qualify for that debate. The USA Today reports that candidates must be polling at 2% or higher in 4 different approved nationwide or early state surveys. They must also receive donations from over 130,000 individuals coming from at least 20 states with 400 donors each by August 28th. So it's August 28th. That's not a lot of time for other candidates who have yet to qualify. One of those candidates being Tulsi Gabbard. She has yet to qualify for the September debate, and she may not. When Tom Steyer, his strategy to qualifying for this debate is what's especially dubious. He spent $7 million on TV advertising alone, The Atlantic reported. His campaign also plastered social media with ads urging voters to donate as little as $1, each of which would count as a unique donor to meet the debate minimum. In other words, he spent his fortune on advertising to get those small donors. His fortune, in other words, did give him an edge in getting those small donors. That's really sad, and it undermines our democracy. So, reactions to this: Steve Bullock hits the nail on the head when he states that the DNC donor requirement may have been added with the right intentions, but there's no doubt that it's created a situation in which billionaires can buy their way onto the debate stage, and campaigns are forced to spend millions on digital ads chasing $1 donors, not talking directly to voters. Bullock said in a statement. His presidential campaign has made a tent pole issue out of working to get big money out of politics, which I might add, so is Bernie Sanders, so is Elizabeth Warren, so is Tulsi Gabbard. Anyways, the article continues with Bullock stating, "We're kidding ourselves if we're calling a 10 million purchase of 130,000 donors a demonstration of grassroots support." So yeah, this is outrageous. So I will play a little clip about Tom Steyer defending himself as far as why he thinks he's a suitable candidate for the presidency. But let me first actually talk about some of his policy positions. So he rose to fame in 2012 when he created the Next Gen Climate Action PAC, right? Now it's called the Next Gen America. And in 2012, Steyer was the primary financial backer of California's Proposition 39, which sought to repeal a corporate tax break and redirect some of the funds to energy conservation efforts. Since then, he's backed Democratic candidates that he believed would boost his environmental agenda, including former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe and Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. So, also in 2013, he began lobbying against the Keystone Pipeline, which would carry tar sands oil from Canada to Texas. At the time, Obama was very wishy-washy about whether he would allow the Keystone Pipeline to be built or not. He said, well, if it doesn't leave a big carbon footprint, then I'll let it be built. But then it was the State Department that was releasing the studies trying to claim that it wouldn't. And then climate scientists were saying, no, the State Department's wrong. Their estimates are low as far as the estimated carbon output. So Obama remained wishy-washy throughout his presidency regarding Keystone. It was delayed, ultimately, and then Trump revived it. So, Steyer was helpful in that regard, in that he was actively fighting against the Keystone Pipeline and trying to communicate this to the president. So other viewpoints of Steyer's, like on foreign policy, he has criticized Trump for turning allies into enemies. He's been critical of Trump for taking money from foreign governments. And he has argued that the Mueller report provides evidence that Trump obstructed justice by interfering in the special counsel's investigation, which we learned recently from the Mueller testimony that Trump did not obstruct justice, or that's according to Mueller. And other positions include Steyer is pro-choice, and Steyer wants to enact gun control legislation. All in all, these positions that I just listed are no different than traditional Democratic thought, the thought of Democratic candidates. Here's where things get interesting, in my opinion, is that in this article, a Rolling Stone interview from July 2018, Steyer is asked the question, why do you think Democrats should embrace impeachment as a campaign issue? Now, Steyer gives a long response, but within this he states, we have 5.4 million people who signed our petition, referring to a petition in support of impeaching Trump. We communicate with them all the time. Over 60% of them don't vote. They're registered voters, but they don't vote. So the interviewer follows this up with, do you know why? And within this response, Steyer replies, to a very large extent, this election will be a referendum on this president, this administration, and their policies and behaviors. He goes on to say, the concern is, are we going to energize Republicans? And I think that's Nancy's fear. Or are we going to energize Americans and Democrats and independents by doing what's right? Now there, what he's alluding to is the fact that Nancy Pelosi does not support impeachment. And what he's also suggesting is that by initiating the impeachment process, Americans will coalesce, or Americans and Democrats and independents will be energized by this expression of what's right. Okay. So the article continues. Young people, or this is Steyer replying, his reply continuing. Young people turn out at half the rate of other American citizens. They tell us every day that the reason they don't turn out is they don't believe in the system and they don't trust the parties. So that quote is very, very interesting to me because it's on the heels of stating that this election is largely going to be a referendum on Trump. So, Steyer states the election is going to be a referendum on Trump. The young people he's referencing are telling him we are disengaged from this system because of the nature of this system. We don't trust the parties. Again, Steyer saying the problem is Trump. The people Steyer are talking to telling him, no, not just Trump, the system. And so he's contradicting himself in this interview. I wish Steyer would take the advice of these people signing his impeachment pledge that he's in communication with. I wish he would take their advice and focus on the corruption of the system. Because if we follow Steyer's advice and just make this about Trump and we don't focus on the corruption of the system, then we risk the same dichotomy that we faced in the 2016 election. That is, putting forward an establishment candidate, someone that is part of the corrupt system, and putting them against Trump. And when you have two toxic candidates running against each other, you do risk another 4 years of Trump. So anyways, here's a clip from the man himself, Tom Steyer, communicating what his candidacy is all about.
Joining our conversation now, Democratic presidential candidate Tom Steyer. Tom, good morning. Appreciate you coming on with us, especially early out there on the West Coast. I understand you and your campaign have some news to share.
Yes, we do. One of the requirements to be on the debate stage is to have 130,000 individual donations, and people have been asking us if we're going to make it, and the answer is we've made it. As of this morning, in fact, we have 130,000 individual donations. So you've met the donor threshold. You still have a poll threshold to make. Most people believe you will get there and that you will be on the stage for those debates. So what will be your message? This will be an introduction for a lot of the country, although you've spent a lot of money. You've been on the air a lot in places like Iowa, but most of the country hasn't met you, doesn't know what you stand for. In that crowded field, what will be your message in the debate?
I have a simple message, Joe, and that's this. We have a broken government. There's been a hostile corporate takeover of our government, and I'm here to return to government of, by, and for the people. I've been an outsider for 10 years, organizing coalitions of ordinary American citizens to take on unchecked corporate power, and for 10 years, we've been beating those corporations and winning. And that is my message, that is job one, to take back the government from the corporations who bought it.
And it's a similar message, as you know, Tom, to someone like Senator Elizabeth Warren or Senator Bernie Sanders, who've been railing against corporations and corporate money in politics. How will you be different from them?
Well, I think that the big difference is this, that I'm an outsider, that I have been doing it from the outside successfully for 10 years. If you look at the other people who are running for this nomination, they're overwhelmingly insiders. The top 4 people are all senators or former senators who have more than 70 years combined in the Congress and the Senate of the United States. So I think there's a big question for all Democratic voters. If job one is to take back the government from corporations, do you think it's going to come from someone who's a grassroots activist and who's been doing it from the outside successfully, or do you think an insider, somebody who's been working inside the Beltway for years, is the person who's actually going to change D.C.?
So, Steyer refers to himself as a grassroots activist and an outsider, which I guess he is, he is a billionaire activist. He is, organizing at a grassroots level, but he's also organizing in the form of giving lavish amounts of money to different causes. Now, I'm not necessarily saying, in the context of our political system, I understand and, I sympathize. I want money out of politics, but he is giving that money to political races towards individuals that support reform on climate change, right? Or support positive climate policies. But the fact is that's still an insider. You're inside the system just in a different way. You're not elected, but you've been inside the system at least since 2012. So I don't know what all this outsider stuff is about. By the way, there are people on the inside of the political system that behave as outsiders, right? People that have been bucking the establishment for years. Now, you could, on the one hand, say, well, they're an insider because they are in elected office and they've been there for years. But within the inside of the political establishment, they behave as outsiders. They are consistently in conflict with the political establishment. And I'm describing Bernie Sanders. So let me just end by sharing this excerpt from an article I read. In a 2014 profile, he told Men's Journal that he realized I really don't want the highlight of my life to be my success as an investor. His wife, Catherine Taylor, said the couple became embarrassed in the mid-2000s that they were profiting from investments in oil companies while committing themselves to environmental issues. In 2012, Steyer stepped down from his role at the hedge fund, sold his personal fossil fuel assets, and got involved in electoral politics. Now, I'm grateful that Steyer is fighting for positive environmental policies, that he's fighting against climate change. But this was really odd to me. In mid-2000s, states he notices the contradiction of him having these fossil fuel assets and advocating for environmental policies. And it takes him how long to do something about it? In 2012, he sells his fossil fuel assets. And then immediately that same year, he founds these climate change pacts. So he goes from such detachment that he has still hanging on to these fossil fuel assets to complete involvement, to where he gains notoriety for giving and giving and giving so much money for positive environmental policies. You know, I don't want it to any way, you know, speak negatively of his fight against climate change. But that's weird. You know, I mean, we are looking for a leader in this election. We're trying to elect a leader. I would feel comfortable if you would explain why you didn't sell your fossil fuel assets sooner. For years, there's been a drumbeat about climate change and how the world is getting warmer and warmer and warmer. We kept having record-breaking years of how hot the global temperature was. And you were still hanging on to fossil fuel assets? I don't know. Hey guys, I hope you liked this video. Make sure, if you did, to click like down below and subscribe to this channel. And remember to click the bell. That way you'll get a notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Share this video with whoever you feel might find it valuable. And just remember, the more likes this video gets, the more views, and the more subscriptions, the more this channel can thrive and grow. Thank you.